A few years ago, I ran into Doug Vogt when I was doing research because I knew things were really wrong. When I found Doug, oh my gosh, what a benefit. He's written so many books and he died in December, which is a whole nother story, but which I won't get into. But he taught me so much, for which I'm forever grateful. One of the things that he taught me was about the magnetic pole shift and the cyclic nature of our universe. This isn't hard to prove. It's very easy, actually. I've got so many books about it, and the books were written long ago, so they couldn't take them off the market, although they tried, because several of the books have discard in them. And I've got lots of them. I'll show you. For one, you can find out almost anything you want to find out in a physics book. But here, in The Light of Egypt, you'll find a story called what is it? It's French, Le Clef de Hermétique. And in that story, it will explain all about the cyclical period and the 7 historical families. And it ties right in with the great year and the numbers. Sacred geometry is critical for understanding anything at all in the world we live in. And there are several great teachers out there I highly recommend. I found Doug Vogt, then before that I found Randall Carlson, who teaches it. Randall, to me, is the very best teacher. However, he's kind of like me. He's all over the place. And so you can learn volumes by tuning into him, but sometimes he gets a little off track. He's my preferred. At any rate, when I started doing my research, I realized that most of our truthful information has been hidden in what they call the occult literature. That's where you'll find the real truth. In this particular book, which is a combination of the ancient documents, there are so many ancient documents that we have. I have a list of them. You can get them off like the Harvard Library. Some of the top Ivy League colleges will have a list, and you can download the most ancient documents that we have, or at least what we're told are the most ancient. If you start, you're going to read The Hermetic Key of Urania's Mysteries, written in 1880. That was a very peculiar year when a lot of stuff went to crap. I don't know what they did. Honestly, I have not figured it out. But a lot was happening. Rather than build these buildings, they obviously put buildings on top of buildings so we wouldn't know what was under it. There are a lot of reasons for that. Originally, I thought, well, that makes perfect sense, because if you're going into a new area, you're going to site out where's the best place. And for them, the best place was the place that they could see the stars and the sun and the sky and all that, right? Because that's what we depend on. What they did was found those places, and actually they're magnetic ley lines in the earth. And that gets complicated, so I won't go into that until maybe later. But it just makes sense. So when you look at buildings, if you dig under, you're going to find buildings and buildings and buildings deep. or cave systems like in Israel and the Antarctic. Nothing we've been told about is Re-El. It stands for Ra, being God, and Ra is the sun. Israel is fake as all get out. And the red team keeps building them up. So the red team is evil. When will you guys ever start looking and listening and figuring out that things just aren't cut and dry like they tell you? They are all corrupt. You cannot be in the admin today without being complicit in every evil thing. I'm sorry. You should get a little clue when you look at this, which is on my bulletin board to remind me. William Casey, CIA director. An impending disaster that takes place every 12 to 15,000 years. Scientists are aware of it, and the covert reason for the space program was to explore the effects of the disaster through the system. He said we don't have the technology to avoid the inevitable situation. That was written on May 9th, 1979 by Ken Cussman. William Casey, who I've read a lot about and have several books on, because no one is who you think they are. He said, when we will know that our disinformation program is complete, when everything the American public believes is false. Is that enough to wake you up? What is? I've been trying for 5 years to tell you guys that things aren't right, but I can't wake up the sheep. And today I figured out why. I listened to a guy this morning on how they train people for evil. And they did an experiment. They put an ad in the paper. This is in the 60s, really happened. They put an ad in the paper and said that they were doing an experiment and that they would pay you and give you a lunch and just come down to the hospital. When they got there, they had a group. One man was assigned to the back room, and he would be in charge of working the equipment. Another one of the volunteers that thought they were helping science, and they were, I guess, sat outside in another room, and he was answering questions. Meanwhile, there's a recording going on that's horrible sounds, right? Okay, so at this time, there's a guy in the back. Okay, you've got two volunteers, one on this side of the window, one on this side of the window or door. The guy in the back is saying to this man, you're going to push the button on the machine to deal out response to the man on the other side of the window. When his answers are right, you will do nothing. If his answers are wrong, I will tell you what to do to the guy. What could he do? Well, the machinery, the technology had a board, and it started at the left with shock, small shock, bigger shock, bigger shock, bigger shock, until the end. And the last shock, I think, was like 240 volts. Now, during this time, the people that were giving the punishment for wrong answers, they didn't think that they would really be able to hurt the people on the other side. But they did. Do you know how many times the controller put the person on the other side answering the questions? Do you know how many times this guy gave this guy enough electricity to kill him? 100%. Is that scary? They know exactly what to do to manipulate our minds. Our minds are the most powerful thing that we have. And that's why the Bible says that your mind is the enemy of Christ. That's why you're made sheep. Don't you see? Can't you see bigger? I don't want to share all this, but it's time to wake up the sheep.